Hello, I'm Simon Thorpe, Red Tractor's Fresh Produce Technical Manager. Welcome to this short presentation about the next version of the Red Tractor Fresh Produce Standards. In this presentation, I will give a brief introduction, followed by a summary of our recent consultation on the proposed changes. Then I will talk through the key changes and new standards that are being introduced with version 5. As the UK's largest and most comprehensive food assurance scheme, Red Tractor's core mission is to reassure the public that food bearing its logo is safe and responsibly produced. When it was founded over 2 decades ago, the focus was on food safety, animal welfare and environmental protection. But, as with all industries, demands shift, and the scheme has developed to keep pace with those demands. We review our standards every 3 to 4 years across all sectors, to help our members meet the evolving expectations of consumers and adapt to market requirements as simply as possible. Developed over a 12-month period, the proposals were drawn up with input at every stage from farmers, farming unions and associations, academics, processors and retailers. This year, for the first time in its history, we directly opened up our consultation process to our 46,000 farmer members, making it the biggest and most transparent consultation ever. More than 3,000 pieces of feedback were received from across the industry and customers during the review, which ran for 2 months across January and February. To ensure that the consultation was as broad as possible, we gathered feedback in the form of meetings, written questions, emails and phone calls, and almost 750 responses were submitted on our consultation platform. We received responses to the fresh produce proposals from individual farmers, grower groups, consultants, processors, retailers, campaigning organisations, and many others. Once the consultation closed, all of the responses were read and reviewed, assigned to relevant standards, and fed into the committee review process for consensus. For each individual proposal, we analysed the proportion of respondents that agreed or disagreed, and we read every single comment. The feedback we received from respondents was invaluable, as it enabled us to refine and improve the standards to ensure they are fit for purpose and practical to achieve. The Technical Advisory Committee for each sector were provided with all of the responses and a summary of the analysis for each proposal. In some cases, there was clear support and these proposals were adopted with a few tweaks where needed. In other cases, there was clear disagreement or more discussion was needed. The TACs discussed and debated the proposals and balanced up the sometimes conflicting views. Once the TAC reached consensus on the final wording, the standards were put forward to the sector board for sign-off. The 5th version of the standards have now been agreed and come into effect from the 1st of November 2021. In a previous narrated presentation released as part of the consultation earlier this year, I summarised the main proposals that were being consulted on and explained some of the rationale behind why certain standards were being introduced or amended. I will now take you through some of the key changes that have been adopted and highlight important things to be aware of ahead of the 1st of November. When you receive your copy of the Fresh Produce Standards, you might notice that they look slightly different. There isn't a huge change, but the middle How You'll Be Measured column has now been split into individual audit points. This won't make a big difference to scheme members, as your assessor will have audited you against that detail previously anyway, and you won't receive more non-conformances. It just means that Red Tractor is able to collect more granular data regarding the reason why a non-conformance has been raised. In time, this will enable us to provide more guidance and support to members in areas where there are more non-conformances. One other thing you might notice is that the coding of the standards and audit points doesn't always follow a consecutive order. Don't worry, there aren't standards missing. It's simply because we've aligned the coding across the farm sectors and certain standards aren't applicable in all sectors. We've also added guidance boxes, as you can see here in dark grey. You'll see more of these dotted through the manual. These have been added to give you more guidance and clarification around certain standards, to help you and assessors understand exactly what's required. For fresh produce, one of the most significant changes for version 5 is structural. We will move away from the crop protocols. The crop protocols were produced for many years with expert input from some of the industry's most knowledgeable agronomists and crop specialists, and we are extremely grateful for their contributions and will continue to be informed and guided by their expertise. Our in-depth review of how the crop protocols are used today gave us a clear indication that these documents have begun to be used primarily as a tool for passing assessments, rather than as a living guide to best agronomic practice. We should view this change positively. The increasing professionalisation of the industry over the last 20 years has made top-down prescriptive guidance less necessary. Farms today are far better equipped to define their own approaches in a bespoke way that best suits their individual circumstances. Armed with this knowledge, we proposed an alternative structure based around operational area, and the public consultation showed strong support for this new approach. Under version 5, there will be 11 core assessment sections concerning crop production and systems that are applicable to all. There are a further 5 sections defined by operational area, such as harvesting and storage, and these will be assessed where relevant. We have also retained the option for supplementary modules to cover particular topic areas and meet specific needs. We will launch with 2 modules to meet specific needs for particular crops. Further modules may follow, but further additions will likely be opt-in modules to cover specific topics and offer further assurance options for farms and choice for buyers. As we move away from the crop protocols, there is also a need to redefine crop scope. Scope of certification by crop has historically been closely connected to the crop protocols. Our new approach has been created with reference to the CRD crop definitions list. The crop definitions list provides an independent reference point for distinguishing different crop commodities, and these are the same definitions used by CRD for defining approval scope of plant protection products and application of maximum residue limits. So this will dovetail neatly with a pre-existing system for defining different crops. For most growers, this will mean no change. It will, however, allow for more specific and logical scopes of certification for niche and minority crops, meaning that certification is a better representation of a farm's portfolio of crops and improved consistency with crop categorizations used by regulators. Risk-based approach to food safety. Food safety is at the very heart of the fresh produce scheme. This is already delivering good outcomes, and the changes are about sensible improvements to ensure we address new knowledge and changing practice, rather than major changes. For crops that may be eaten raw, we will now require growers to keep a record of risk assessment reviews. This can be a simple record, and guidance is provided in the scheme manual. The risk assessment is the central system for management of food safety on farm, and it is important to verify that this remains an accurate reflection of actual practice and that all relevant processes and risks are considered. We have modified terminology used for preventative actions to allow these to be managed in a more targeted and less onerous way, to reflect that some preventative actions may be a part of basic good agricultural practice and good hygiene practice and do not need to always be managed in the same way as those controls with the greatest influence on food safety. We have also strengthened the requirements for site or field risk assessment and upgraded this to a key standard. Food poisoning outbreaks in other parts of the world and the lessons learned by regulators and other farm assurance schemes reinforce the importance of managing risks from historic and adjacent land use effectively. All of these changes were well supported in the consultation and will be implemented. We have, however, listened carefully where concerns have been raised. We proposed introducing a requirement for risk assessment leads to have certified risk assessment training. Concerns were registered about the limited amount of farm-specific certified training available. Our Technical Advisory Committee and Board reflected upon this feedback, and we have removed this requirement. We have also developed this systematic preventative approach to managing food safety in other areas of the assessment. We have introduced a daily startup check for harvest teams. While new for Red Tractor, an equivalent standard is present in a number of comparable certification schemes. A simple check to ensure hygiene standards are operating correctly and that no obvious product contamination risks are present is a simple preventative measure. Early identification reduces risk, and the record provides objective evidence that a check has taken place. We have introduced a new post-harvest washing section to more closely address risks associated with washing of produce, particularly where water is reused or recirculated. We have also introduced a new protected cropping section to better consider risks relevant to existing protected environments, such as glasshouse and mushroom farms, but also to ensure the standards are better suited for newer protected cropping systems, such as vertical farms and hydroponics. Again, we are happy to say that the changes made received good support in the consultation, but we also listened carefully where concerns were raised. Some reservations were expressed about extending the need for return-to-work interviews where workers are rejoining the workforce after ill health absence. We have listened and simplified this requirement for clarity and to ensure it is not overly onerous. Responsible use of plant protection products, or PPPs. The Fresh Produce Scheme has played a key role in ensuring PPP use is safe and within the scope of an integrated pest management plan. This builds upon the work of other organisations and initiatives, such as BASIS, the Voluntary Initiative, NSTS, and others. Red Tractor's key contribution is setting out a strong framework for good practice and providing regular, independent verification that these standards are well embedded across the sector. We have strengthened requirements in a few key areas. We have added some further clarity to storage and handling requirements. Stock checks will now need to be completed on a minimum monthly basis, and we have introduced a simple requirement to link PPP deliveries to supplier to ensure that these are traceable to source. We have also sought to ensure that we are responding to changes in practice and regulation. We have introduced a new standard for recording the introduction of biological controls, and have updated our requirements for store treatments to reflect the loss of CIPC and to consider management of new store treatments and potential legacy risks from CIPC. Testing requirements. For version 5, we have strengthened and clarified our expectations for pesticide residue testing. While testing is a verification rather than a control, this is an important outcome measurement that provides some clear assurance that responsible use of PPPs is delivering safe, legal products. It is important that expectations are well defined and consistent, and we have made clear that each crop must be tested at least annually, except where a clear evidence-based mitigation applies. We have also upgraded recommendations for the use of accredited laboratories for other testing to full standards. Accredited testing methods provide credibility, and this helps ensure that test results are reliable evidence when evaluating key considerations, such as the suitability of irrigation water. We have also made some simple clarifications to the water matrix that will help simplify things for members where the irrigation period is very short or where water use is purely for the establishment of drilled crops. With the launch of this next version of the Fresh Produce Standards, we want to make sure you have everything you need to help ensure you're meeting all of the requirements. Look out for checklists which detail what has changed and why in each sector, and newsletters which give further details on why the new standards have been introduced, why they matter to you, and what you need to do differently. For more information, head to the Red Tractor Assurance website, where you'll find guidance, templates, and other useful material. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.